the shores of old Lake Erie stands our alma mater true. Fredonia state we proudly honor with its colors white and blue. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast of Reflections of Fredonia. I am Jack Roxton, an emeritus faculty from SUNY Fredonia. I taught in the psychology department for over 40 years. And in retirement, I thought it would be fun to reach out to alumni and find out what they've been up to since graduating from Fredonia and to give them an opportunity to reminisce a little bit about the time they spent here as an undergraduate. We are recording our podcast from the Fredonia Radio Systems, the student-run radio station right here on campus.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chloe Kowalik. I initially graduated here from Fredonia in May 2024, and I am now back at Fredonia pursuing my Master's of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling.
For today's podcast, we have a very special guest. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself by telling us your name and when you graduated from Fredonia.
My name is Jeff Eggleston, and I graduated in 2006.
So, Jeff, what did you study while you were a student here at Fredonia? And when you started here, did you have any idea that you would end up where you are today?
Doctor, that is a loaded question. I think I like to say that my journey was, very unique and nonlinear. But I'd like to also hope to think that a lot of people can relate to that. Way back in 2001, and if you do the math, I did Fredonia in 5 because I changed my major. I started as a BFA acting major, and at that time I was, a 18-year-old, in my mind, adult that had all the answers, and I knew exactly what I was going to do with my life. But I ended up graduating very proudly with a degree in communication with a concentration in television and digital film, and I double minored, one in political science and one in theater. But I didn't know exactly what that I was going to end up in the position I am today. But the journey is something I'm very proud of and excited to talk to you about.
Cool.
So with starting out in acting, when you watch a movie, do you ever say, boy, I could have been in that movie?
I try to be more humble, but I am annoying to watch content with because I can't even call it movies. I love the movies, but a lot of people just kind of, are digesting content through, online platforms, big screens, whether it's a television or a computer or an iPad, all those fun things. But I can be annoying to watch content with because I now more so than trying to like put myself in the actor's shoes, I'm putting myself in the director, the producer, all the different elements that went into that scene or shot. We're all guilty of the continuity, call outs in our business. But I do enjoy kind of analyzing it, but also the really good stuff. I love to all that fades away. And when it's really good and it connects with me, I get fully immersed, and that's the goal.
So why did you make the switch over? Was there a
Um,
course that you took, or what caused you to kind of switch gears?
yeah, I mean, looking back on it, I think there's a few parallels. I was so excited when I first got there, and then realizing, you know, um, kind of the trajectory of the auditioning and being part of the programs, and again, being a very proud member of the 2001 class. I think they took like 20 of us or something out of how many auditioned. Um, and then just the welcoming campus of Fredonia. I'm sure it's even better now, but back then you were immersed in everything. They didn't just seclude you to your major. You obviously had to, involve yourself in all the other curriculum and areas. And the behind the scenes storytelling, I think I've always been drawn to. That's what the fun of acting drew me to, and understanding that having more of a collaboration of that kind of led me to the communication department. And then my first break in, what was it, Thanksgiving of 2021, I went down to New York City where I had a family friend who was an assistant director of a show that was on broadcast at the time. And he let me be an extra. And I, worked a 12-hour day. I got my check. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And he's like, what are you doing up in Fredonia? I was like, hey, I got into the BFA acting program. He goes, oh, congratulations. That's great. He's like, can you come down to New York and like audition more? And, I was like, it's pretty far away, and I want to really immerse myself in the college experience. And of course, my parents want me to get something to fall back on, because even if I'm extremely successful in the acting world, it's not as consistent. And he's like, yeah, I know, I can totally relate to that. So it's a really good idea. And he asked me, so what's the degree you're getting to fall back on? And I was like, BFA acting. And it kind of opened my eyes and horizon to look outside of that as well, which again led me to that communication department.
Cool. How did you find out about Fredonia? What made you want to come here?
Good question. I was auditioning at a few schools, and Fredonia is, as you know, very well known in the arts, the music,
Right.
and also just the visiting of it. Again, it was that community. It had such a good feel to it. It was a beautiful weekend that we went up there. Me and my parents were bouncing around different parts of New York and slightly into Pennsylvania. And it was just the stars aligned. It was a gorgeous weekend. Had a really good audition, went down by the lake, and I could just picture myself like, this is my hopeful next spot. And then when I got the acceptance letter, I knew that's where I was going to go.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any like favorite memories of your experiences when you were here? Any particular course or any particular professor stand out as you look back on that time?
Doctor, I could do a whole podcast on some of my highlights of Fredonia. The communication department, uh, we had the big chill, uh, Chillberg,
Mhm.
which I was a fan of. Jane Jackson, Action Jackson, I still communicate with to this day. She was a big part of the television and digital film, and just a champion of the students and being able to share her real world experience. I've gone back a few years ago. I can't even remember how many, probably definitely over 5, and got to talk to a couple of her classes while she was still there. Um, uh, the sound science radio man, was it Dan Bergren, was
Oh,
Dan.
yeah.
amazing. Oh God, I I regret not understanding the access I had back then as that 18, 19-year old. Yeah, but those are standouts in the academic area. And then again, if tracing it back to my theater roots, Mary Charbonnet, um, Ivy probably wasn't biggest fan of me, but they're all great. Paul McKovac, such just amazing people. I still contact with Steve Reese, who I'm sure is retired, but the guys that did the behind the scenes and did the action and the build and the collaboration. All the students had to be part of the whole process, no matter if you were cast in it or not. So just that whole sense of storytelling, community, and then again, it could be a whole nother podcast, but I was very active in the community. I was active on campus. I was part of the Delta Chi fraternity, where I ended up being president one of the years. I was bartender at Heenan's and Muldoon's, and then Harry Lemon, which was above Muldoon's back then. So I was very active in just meeting the student body, but also the community of Fredonia. Um, and there's countless stories that I have to go back to on those. Um,
Yeah. Well, I'm good friends with Steve and Mary.
oh,
Mary's back in Fredonia, and so I see her quite a bit. Steve and I have actually traveled together Steve and Mary and Mary and me. We've been to Cuba together and South America, and yeah, they're great people. And of course, Dan
Yeah.
Bergeron's had quite a career after leaving Fredonia, with his recordings of Adirondack music, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to pick your brain in person. And I gotta tell Steve that I'm coming up and hopefully get to connect with some people on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like you had quite a fun and rewarding undergraduate career.
I really did. I really did.
Other things in regards to Fredonia, and now that you've gone on and had an extensive career working in television as a producer, director of productions and account management. Tell us a little bit about your career trajectory and what you're up to today.
Graduating back in 2026, uh, I went back to my hometown of Binghamton, New York, where I have a very large family who's still based in and around there. And I got into local news, which I'm sure some of the students have been able to intern or gone on to work at those places. I hope they still are just um, really brilliant opportunities to learn quick, fail in a safe space and be able to try on many hats of production. Um, so right out of the gate, I was, recording some stand-ups, not on camera, but with the local anchors. I was working the weekends. I was helping the weatherman download the weather from the national and practice on the green screens. During broadcast, I was running teleprompter or stage directing. Got to do some light editing. Then I was in the control room where I'm running CG some nights, or I'm the tape op. And back then, I'm not sure if your listeners will remember, but there's VHS tapes, and we could, dial in right to the millisecond, and we'd have it queued up, or we'd go from tape, to playback. And all of that, looking back on it, was just really helpful to, get that confidence. Live is exciting. And then I was lucky enough to have some connections in New York City, which I had always been going to my whole life. I was always drawn to the energy of New York and felt I didn't know what I was going to do, but it was going to happen there at some point. And I started out as a PA with Food Network, thanks to someone I grew up with in my hometown was a coordinator, and she got to do the crewing up. And I remember where I was. I was at Wildwood, New Jersey, where me and my parents and like their good friends who we grew up with always vacationed in the summers. And I got that call. It was like a 3-week gig, and you got the day rate. And my brother, who is the brains of the family, Dr. Eggleston, he was getting one of his many master's degrees, and he was at Fordham, and he got a stipend with his scholarship that gave him this shoebox of an apartment in a beautiful neighborhood. And I was like, Jeremy, I just got my big break. I got a job in New York. Can I crash on your couch for a couple weeks stops? Um, and looking back on it, it's humbling, but it really was. I was getting coffee and sweeping floors, but it was the connections I made there that led me to the next job, to the next job, to the next job. And I was just right time, right place. 2006 was this weird microcosm of reality docuseries television. It was either gonna, phase out, or it was going to explode beyond belief and touch any idea, any job, any relationship status. And as we all know, that happened, and there wasn't a bunch of people that knew how to make it. And we got to learn very quickly. Have gun will travel. I was all over. I was on the road and growing into associate producer, director, supervising producer, um, and that is his own podcast by itself. But what was it, 2019, I was ending a run of a show that was supposed to be 6 months. And it turned into 7 years, 150 plus episodes. I think it was 11 seasons how it broke out. And it had finally run its course. And I was a little burned out and exhausted from the process, very humbled and grateful for it, but also contemplating my next move. And I got an offer to do another series that was already established. It was part of the 90 Day Fiance series. And I went and did that. And I could just see myself taking that another 7 plus years and turning around, being like, oh, that was supposed to be 6 months.
Mhm.
At that time, I met another Fredonia graduate on a plane that was, I think you guys hopefully will interview as well, unless you maybe already have, but Gary Phillip, who was getting his master's when
Mhm.
I was getting my undergrad at Fredonia. And we always stayed in touch. And we were on the same flight and we went to the, establishment and had a glass of our favorite beverage afterwards. And we started, sharing stories, and we had been following each other on social media. And he's like, "Yeah, I've been watching you on the docs and the reality." I was like, "Yeah, I've been watching you on the kind of tech and agency side of it." And he's like, "We're really expanding on the West Coast. Would you ever consider coming? You know, one working out of California, and two, coming over to kind of big tech and the agency side." And I had already seen the writing on the wall that streaming was just gaining momentum and
Right.
broadcast was kind of struggling. And we were like, what is streaming and how do we do it? Can we really bypass the networks? And he's like, well, they own YouTube and they're letting us kind of behind the curtain. And I was like, whatever I got to do, I want in and I want to find out if I can make the transition as well. And we did this Cinderella story. If the shoe fits, I don't know if I'm going to make the transition over and be good with your team or your clients. And, you don't know if I'm going to be a good fit and if you're going to like me there. So let's do 3 months and then we'll reassess. And that was 2019. It's now 2026 and the shoe fits nice. It
Yeah.
gets more and more comfortable every day.
Well, it sure sounds like you've done a good job of taking advantage of opportunities when they present themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for saying that. And I think that's one of the messages I hope to kind of share with, you know, myself as I'm talking to Jeff from 2006 in my mind as I go back to Fredonia. But, the students and just, connecting with the faculty, the alumni, the community, and just one, myself being mindful of like it, you never know where these connections are going to lead you and be open to them. And then just remind the students that it's the relationships that you might be making today or next year, and you never know how they're going to unfold later on. So um, be grateful and grow them. Never burn a bridge because you never know if
Mhm.
that person's going to become the client or the boss. um, but yeah, I think that it really
Yeah.
ties into what drew me to the communication department and that major as well.
Yeah. What do you think has been the most challenging aspect of your work?
Time. Um, if I could only make more of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
I, you
Yeah.
know, I'm guilty of saying a few phrases ad nauseum, and one of my team has even put it on like they used cursive and made an art thing, and it's now like a soundproofing piece of the studio that we work out of. Um, and it says the only constant is change. Um,
Mhm.
and I think looking back, I like to think as I preach it, I adapted to it quickly, but that has been the ever reminding um, biggest challenge. But I think us understanding it, we're ready for it. The production company that I own, that I kind of started to in the early days because we were all independent contractors, is Murphy's Law Productions. And Murphy's Law, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. But I look at it as more of a positive and just a, acknowledgement that, especially in the production world, but I think it crosses over to multiple facets and genres of uh,
Mhm.
jobs and relationships. But it's expect the best, but prepare for the rest. And
Yeah.
anything with live, you just need contingencies. You need to practice it, do it in a sandbox, retro all your productions, make sure you carve out the time. What went right? What got crunchy? How do we get ahead of that next time? And then carve out the time to practice, practice, practice that. So when that change arrives, when Murphy shows up, because he works in production on a regular basis, you're you're almost like laughable. Like, yeah, we already got a plan for that. Boom, boom, two buttons, or different cue. So it that has definitely been, I think, the biggest difficult, especially early on, because it humbles you. You know, you think you have all the answers until, something goes hard left, while you're
Mhm.
live. And
Right.
it reminds you to take the time when that red light's not on, when you aren't live, to practice for those contingency things.
Sounds like pretty sound advice for someone in your career.
So we know that you also won an Emmy for your work, which is incredible. Tell us a little bit what that was like.
Yeah, I wonder if Gary will work this into his part with you guys. But I was early on in New York. I got into casting. That was one of my second or third jobs. In I got into casting for Cash Cab, which was a game show. I think it's still on.
Oh yeah, I remember
And
that.
yeah, and it didn't realize, what was going to happen. And we beat Alex Trebek and Jeopardy
Oh
for
wow.
the first year, and we were floored. And then we won the second. I think I started off as a casting coordinator, then I was a casting producer, and going back to fresh out of college, I thought this was going to happen all the time. Like, oh, this is just, this must this is not now my trajectory. But yeah, very, very exciting. Very grateful for that whole process, and learned so much. Yeah.
So being in this industry, I mean, have you had an opportunity to actually rub elbows with some fairly famous people, and, and what was that like?
Yeah. The show that I did that was supposed to be 6 months that turned into 7 years was a show about a fish tank, and it was called Tanked on Animal Planet. And any time a reality show kind of goes past the third or fourth season, the um, structure is to then include celebrities. We need to find a new kind of market. And back then, before influencers was a thing, part of the contract was the celebrities would then share it out on their social media, and that would help, expand your audience, hopefully. So I have like this coffee table book of pictures of working with these celebrities. A lot of them were in sports, like Shaquille O'Neal,
Uh,
Marshawn Lynch. Oh, one
oh,
of my favorites is Betty White. We got to work with Betty
oh,
White.
Oh,
Betty.
that's cool.
Oh, in the game show world, I worked with her and Regis on a remake of Password, way back in the
Yeah.
New York days. Then I got to meet her again and Tanked, because she was a major advocate for animals and shelters and pets. And
Uh,
um, yeah, that was one of the highlights. And I get
Oh,
asked a lot of, like, who is the favorite or who is the worst. People love the negative. And
yeah.
I think my best realization and advice is, no one is on all the time. And if you hear negative stories about one or multiple, people that, were celebrities, like, try to humanize. Like, they weren't on a red carpet. They weren't at a paid event where they're supposed to be there and prepared to smile and take pictures and thank you for enjoying whatever part of art or creativity they gave to the world. They were probably in a situation where they might not be at their best. Try to put yourself in their shoes. They might be fighting with a partner, or got some bad news about a family member, or they're human, and you just thought because they get paid a lot of money for what they do, you could just go up and invade their space and take a picture. And you met a human that day, and they weren't and super excited to see you.
Yeah.
I try to remind people that I've never met any of them that was angry all the time. But they are layered, like all of us. But also, I think there's the jux to that, where a lot of them surround themselves with yes people, and
Mhm.
they're a business, and they don't have a ton of great friendships or advisors, because the people around them are making money from them, so they just kind of fluff them, and that
Yeah.
can be a hollowing experience for them,
Mhm. Sure.
so
I
It's
have to say, if when I get kind of down, maybe after watching the news, I enjoy watching an episode of The Golden Girls with Betty White.
absolutely. What you got a favorite? You got a favorite?
With a favorite episode? Oh,
Yeah.
well, just with Betty, and there's her stories about him growing up in Minnesota, and
St.
so it's
Olaf.
and say, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, now, Doctor, if you had to say you're more like one of the Golden Girls, who would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one. Probably it might be Betty's character. Although, which one was Blanche? Was that?
Blanche was the Southern belle,
Oh no, I wouldn't. I
free with
wouldn't.
love.
I
You're
Free
wouldn't
with
not
have
love.
been. I
Blanche.
wouldn't have been Blanche. No, probably more Betty or the who was the other one? She was kind
The
of the more
boss was
businesslike
the
person.
boss was Dorothy.
Dorothy, yeah,
Yeah,
probably a little bit of Dorothy.
B Arthur. She was
Yeah,
a executive producer and writer of the show too back then.
yep,
Which was,
exactly.
yeah.
So, how do you feel that your time at Fredonia helped to shape your career and where you are today?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think being able to look back on it, which I'm just starting to do more of and excited to continue this, is that non-linear embrace community of the campus of whatever major I was in at the time, the community of the theater department, the community of the communications department, um, and to be able to find that confidence, not ego, but like humble confidence of make the connections and see where they go. That I didn't realize that's what I was learning when I was there, but looking back, that is one of my biggest takeaways, and I use that every day. And I wouldn't be where I am today, Saturday morning at 8:36 a.m. About to go to a studio where I have to prep with a team that created a robot dog that is going to be interacting with humans. That's going to be part of one of the monolithic companies here in Silicon Valley that I work with on a regular basis. So you never know.
It's
I
true.
couldn't, if you asked me that in 2006, if I was going to be, working with a robot dog in
Uh-huh.
Silicon Valley, uh, you know, I
Yeah.
I never would have believed you. But also, I'd like to think back to that kid back then would probably, smirked and been like, yeah, I'll
Mhm.
try that, you know?
Yep.
And that came from Fredonia. It's just there's something about that space that was so different than where I grew up in Binghamton, and I got to embrace that opportunity of like, who am I? What do I stand for? What excites me? What do I want to do?
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah.
that Fredonia gave me that ability to really chase it.
That kind of segues into what was going to be our last question, which is, what kind of advice would you offer Fredonia students? But I think you've kind of given that answer in discussing what advantages
Oh
you
yeah.
took you took it you did while you were here. So
Yeah. I mean, yeah, to try to, you know, again, I am not brief. To try to say it in a few sentences, but uh, Fredonia gave me the space to explore.
mhm,
I would be amiss if anyone from my college experience hears this and doesn't hear this next sentence because kind of annoyed all of them with it. But the journey is the destination, and I
mhm,
quoted that very early on. I still believe it, but
mhm,
it's hard to understand that you're in it now. You think you're aimed at something. I got to get to that point. I got to win this award. I got to, hit this certain predetermined target. But it's actually the getting there that what it's all about. So try to remind yourself that, students. It's about the work that you're doing now that I think you'll look back on and appreciate more than
mhm.
hitting any of those goals. And I hope you do. I hope you crush your goals and then set bigger ones and higher ones and, reach those as well. And then remember that storytelling connects people and everyone has a story. We're all drawn to it, and write your own.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a lot of fun talking to you and hearing your stories.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you both for considering me and looping me in. And I'm excited to meet you in person.
Great. So that's the end of our latest podcast. I am Jack Croxton.
And I'm Chloe Kwolek, and we'll see you in the next podcast.